I feel like this movie tried to answer the question, can a film live on mood and atmosphere alone? The Dark and the Wicked is a 2020 movie about a brother and sister that returns home as their father is dying, only to be haunted by a malevolent presence. Now, if I were going to make a cake analogy of a movie, like you would have, let's say, the layers of the cake would be the story and the plot. The middle cream would be the characters that connect the two layers together. And the mood and atmosphere would be the icing around the whole thing. Now, is that a perfect analogy? No. But, well, I love cake. So any excuse I can have to talk about cake, I'm going to jump at it. Now, using that example of cake, this movie would look like this. Now, how much mileage you get out of this movie is really going to depend on how much can you live off of that amount of icing. Now, I can go for a while on icing alone, but eventually it just becomes too much sugar. That said, when it comes to the whole mood and atmosphere element, this movie knocks it out of the park. It's everything I could have wanted in a horror movie. Subtle when it needs to be, quiet at times, creepy as hell, tense throughout, with some heavy performances by the cast. It's compelling, it's nuanced, led by the always great Marin Ireland, who plays Louise, a woman really dancing on the edge as she tries to deal with a set of events that she can't really come to grips with, but she's trying her best to keep her family and her sanity together in the face of these things that she just does not understand. I mean, the lighting, the shot composition, the aesthetics, all of them absolutely fantastic. Actually, before I go any further, I want to talk a minute about production designers and art directors. Now, I just need to give some props, I mean, no pun intended, to the production designer and art director for this film. Editors are often called like the silent heroes in movies because, you kind of tend not to notice them unless they're bad. Well, production designers and art directors can be just as overlooked. Sure, there are standouts if the movie is a sci-fi or dystopian or thriller. You definitely have a better chance of noticing what these talented people do. But when it's a small movie that's relying on sort of the natural and the grounded to sell a space, designers can work tirelessly, toiling over very specific details in order to make an environment that you mostly don't notice is even there. Now, it can be a tremendous amount of effort in order for a location to fit seamlessly inside of the world of a film, and that takes craft and dedication. Now, as for this movie specifically, I have no idea how much the designers did on this film. Like, I read that the director used his family farm to shoot this movie, so, this could have been a turnkey-style shooting location. I have no idea. But this movie looks great however they were involved, even if it was just on an approval or tweaking what was their process. So in general, let's all raise a glass to production designers and art directors. Anyway, getting back to this movie. It's funny. This was written and directed by Brian Bertino. Now, the last movie I'd seen from him was The Monster. My feelings on The Monster at the time was I loved the look and feel of the movie, as well as I thought the creature design was fantastic and it had some really great scenes. But my overall problem with that film was that the story was really thin. Like, they seemed to combat this or try to combat this with adding some additional flashbacks for the two characters. But those flashbacks end up coming off very unnecessary, and it almost felt like they were just trying to pad the runtime here. Well, with this movie, it's almost as though what he took from The Monster was to just sort of remove the extra padded scenes. Now, the movie itself is about an older couple on a goat farm in Texas where the husband is currently in a kind of hospice care and he's about to die. They have a part-time nurse that cares for him during the day, and the wife cares for him the rest of the time. However, we learn kind of pretty quickly that something's not right here, and the wife clearly is dealing with an issue beyond just the fact that her husband is dying. At this point, the couple's two children, Louise and Michael, come to stay at the farm in order to help their mother during this difficult time. Now, when they arrive, the mother clearly is angry that they both decided to come and tells them that they should have stayed away. Of course, the siblings think that this is just sort of a pride thing, and they set about trying to help as much as they can. However, they quickly learn that there is something that their mother is just not telling them. And as their mother's behavior becomes more and more erratic, they're kind of pushed to the edge of trying to understand what the hell exactly is going on. Now, as a setup, this is all great, and there's enough story hooks here that really could go in all sorts of directions. The thing that was so puzzling about this movie to me is it kind of doesn't utilize any of them. Like, there's a lot of teasing of storylines, but not much followed through. Now, most movies, and I'll say most movies, not all, you have sort of the why, the what, and the how. Now, the why is, why is this happening right now? What is actually happening? And the how are the characters dealing with it? Now, in some instances, horror movies can get away without a why and can be less important. Like, I think about Jaws or Night of the Living Dead, or even a recent example of The Innocents, where the why this is happening right now is never really explained, and the important thing is the what and the how. But, and this is a big but, if after a while the characters aren't really doing much in the how department, and the underlying why isn't there in the first place, you're just kind of left with a series of things that happens. Great as they are, but it becomes like an itch I can't scratch the longer the movie goes on. And for me, I can only go so far before I need something more than just a series of scary things. Like, things need to start to coalesce into a story that connects everything together. Like, that ends up being the big holdup for me. Now, I'm not saying it's nonsensical. All of these things seemed like it should fit together. And maybe it does. Maybe I just don't get it. Maybe I'm an idiot. But I just kept waiting for this overall understanding of the larger story to come together, and it just never did for me. Now, normally I kind of go in through a bit more of a plot breakdown, but I'm not going to do that with this, because quite honestly, it really is just a series of things that happen, creepy as they may be, where the characters kind of react to them in some fashion, but they never really take many steps to resolve them. But I am going to touch on a few things here that would necessitate a couple spoilers, so I would say skip ahead if you don't want to hear this. The overall problem that I had with this is, after watching it, I still don't exactly understand what this movie was about. Now, the only information that we get in this movie is that the mother kept a journal that Louise reads throughout the movie, which clues everyone in on her mother's state of mind. And so the best that I can guess from that journal is there seems to have been a devil that has staked a claim to harvest the father's soul. But if that's the case, not only do they not seem to be able to stop him, they also don't have any plan whatsoever to hinder him in any way. The devil, demon, whatever, ends up influencing the deaths of like 5 different people, which seems odd to me because, well, why bother with the father? Like, if the father is going to die anyway, I mean, he's terminally ill. So what is the reason for this aggressive nature in which the devil's trying to harvest this one soul? What is so important about this one soul? And it's never really explained, or at least not that I can understand why the father's soul is so important. Now, during the time that Michael and Louise are there, they see ghosts of their dead relatives, people that aren't there, priests that they've never met, as well as deep-seated emotions that are brought to the surface. And what's frustrating is it's all done so goddamn well. But I could never connect it all into a narrative that made any sense to me. Like, there's a scene where the farm caretaker kills himself when he witnesses a vision of Louise appearing in his trailer and cutting herself. Why does her appearing to him and cutting herself influence him to shoot himself? Was this a past trauma of her character that was shared with him? I don't know. There's a priest that comes to the house and claims that he spoke to the mother many times, even though the mother is claimed to be not religious. Now, later on, we find out that the priest lives in Chicago and has actually never been to Texas.
You were here yesterday. We met yesterday.
I've never been to Texas.
Why have that priest in particular show up at the farm and claim to have had a conversation with their mother when they just find out that he was eventually a fake? Like, why impersonate him specifically? Why take over the nurse and force her to commit suicide? Like, I get that the family doesn't believe in religion, but she did. And so she would have been more protected from the devil's influences than the family was. And I really don't get the very end where it said that the greatest sadness is a soul that dies alone. And so as Louise is trying to be lured away from her father at the moment of his death, she perseveres and stays, which to me sounded like, well, this is the central theme of this movie. The devil, demon, whatever you want to call it, his whole mission was to lure the family away or chase the family away so that the dad would die alone, thereby allowing him to harvest that soul. But I mean, the amount of people he kills in that process, not to mention the fact that Louise ends up not leaving her dad at the end moment, and yet the dad dies and then attacks her anyway? I don't understand that. Anyway, just to sort of wrap this up, when it comes to establishing a mood and setting, I'd be hard-pressed to come up with a better example than this movie. I mean, from the performances, to the setting, to the music, all just really establish a film that sucks you right in and is creepy as hell. My issue is that once you get beyond those aspects, it doesn't quite do enough to really flesh out the story in a way that makes it engaging just beyond the scary factor. Now, I am rating this a bit higher than I think I would normally given the amount of story problems that I had with it, but it just does what it does so goddamn well that I think it deserves a higher grade, and I think people should see this. I'd give it a B+, but let me know what you think.